Good morning and welcome everybody to this morning. We are here for a roundtable discussion on taxation for a resilient economy post-LDC graduation. So this is a very interesting and important issue, as we know that our tax revenue tax GDP ratio is one of the lowest in the world and even in South Asia. And this is such a crucial thing that everything depends on the macroeconomic framework, depends actually on the tax realization, without which we cannot do the public work or anything. So we are here to discuss ways, look at the challenges of this thing and find a way for a robust and resilient, progressive and equitable tax system. So we have with us Honorable Advisor, Commerce Advisor, Sheikh Bashiruddin, and we have the UNDP country rep, Stephen. So let's start the discussion. I'm handing it over to Stephen. Thank you.
Mr. Bashiruddin, Honorable Advisor of the Ministry of Commerce, Editor of the Business Standard, our host today, representatives from government ministries and agencies, representatives from the private sector, think tanks and development partners, participants, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to this roundtable on taxation for a resilient economy. Taxation is undoubtedly one of the most critical public policy issues. And the way we look at taxation at UNDP is often very much through a broader financing for development lens. One of our tasks as an international development partner is to assist member states and countries in mobilizing public, private, domestic and external financing that can be deployed for national development and for the achievement of Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. Our work on trade, investment and financing in Bangladesh is very much guided by the Smooth Transition Strategy, which provides a way forward to help Bangladesh's graduation from the group of least developed countries, or LDCs. So today's roundtable is organized by two of our programs or projects, the Transformative Economic Policy Program, which is a trade and investment program supported and funded by the UK government, and something called Economics, which is a global UN and UNDP initiative that is working in a number of countries around the world, which is focusing on dismantling economic structures that generate and perpetuate gender inequality. The purpose of this session is to explore opportunities for Bangladesh to create a tax system that helps the state increase tax revenue while also ensuring equity and gender responsiveness at the same time. And despite some progress, as also mentioned by the editor, the tax-to-GDP ratio in Bangladesh declined to 7.3% in the 2023 fiscal year, which is significantly lower than some of the neighboring countries, such as India, which has 12%, and Nepal with 17.5%. But there's a lot of good practices that Bangladesh can draw from to increase tax revenue, and let me briefly touch upon some of them. First one, a simple and streamlined tax system, reducing unnecessary tax exemptions and gradually formalizing the informal economy. These are tried and tested methods for increasing the tax base, but those alone are not enough. A tax system should and need to be designed to create markets, encourage investments, and create a level playing field, which is critical for an inclusive economy. Bangladesh has already made good progress on gender responsive budgeting, and around 34% of the total budget for the current fiscal year is dedicated to advancing gender equality in the country. However, owing to some lack of capacities, it's not possible at the moment for the government to fully and systematically monitor and evaluate whether these allocations are achieving the intended goals. And a tax system must be financially sustainable also to pay for public goods and services, but it also needs to be equitable. And one of the key areas where we can promote these twin objectives is by targeting women in the informal economy. Gender responsive taxation can encourage participation, economic participation, and it also helps to increase the general tax base. We see this, of course, as a great win of promoting two very important objectives. And an equitable tax system needs to also put small and medium-sized businesses at the center, and they are the main source of employment in Bangladesh today. Many small businesses are working outside the formal sector, with something close to 70 to 80% of them working informally. So incentives and ease of regulatory compliance are key for the formalization of some of these small businesses. So I hope that the discussions today will help us come up with a set of actions that can be taken to make the tax system more effective and inclusive. Specifically, the discussions of today will feed into our joint work with the government on trade, investment, and private sector development. An efficient and pro-development tax system will also help create conditions for improving the business environment, attracting investments, and steering trade policy that reflects the transition from LDC status. The discussion, we hope, will also help to explore ways in which tax policy can become an effective instrument for spurring vibrant private sector development and job-rich growth. The analysis and consultations on efficient and inclusive taxation also feed into ongoing work that UNDP and other UN agencies are doing on supporting the government in adopting an integrated financing framework to align financing for the sustainable development goals. This also complements some of the work that we are trying to roll out to build national capacities in tax auditing through the global initiative Tax Inspectors Without Borders that we are also running in a number of countries around the world together with OECD. Let me stop here, as we will be hearing about an equitable and gender-responsive tax system from our expert, Dr. Sharmin Nelormi, who is leading the analytic work on this very important topic. But again, let me thank all of you for coming out here today for this important dialogue, and also a very special shout out and greetings to the UK government that's supporting not only this project, they're supporting a lot of the work that UNDP and many other UN agencies are doing around the world. The UK government is also an important core donor to UN, which allows us to work and accompany more than 170 countries on their individual development journeys all across the world. So thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Stefan. I would now like to invite our Honorable Commerce Advisor, Sheikh Bashiruddin.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed an honor to be here. When I learned about this roundtable, I thought I should come to educate myself, not so much to speak, because I was just thinking from a basket case to a potential LDC graduate. It is a journey indeed. As a private sector player, and at the same time being a citizen, I think I have always believed the fact is, in a capitalist economic system, fair taxation is only way to implement social justice, without which you will have so many disparities, inequalities, and that would result 5th August, a like of 5th August, which we certainly do not want. We want an equality to prevail and to inequality to disappear. And we need to find a structural reform necessary for this. And the reforms is fundamentally in the tax system, because that's the only way, to my understanding, is to establish social justice. In absence of social justice, we know what can happen. We have seen how nexus of criminal business people and bureaucrats have exploited our national resources and made us, put us into great difficulties. If we look at our national debt, I think the development aspirations that we have as citizens should be funded by our own money. Of course, we can leverage to reasonable extent to fast track our aspirations, but the way that we have seen that those nexus have actually created a serious criminality and inequality, resulted a serious inequality. I think as we are now standing at the doorstep of being graduated, and the graduations will result a lot of constraint by the WTO framework in our fiscal policies, in industries getting incentives, industries getting preferential market access to a lot of the markets. How do we navigate that? We need, at the same time, we need to generate more tax. I mean, we can see the tax-GDP ratio being a shameful state, sadly. The businesses are not generating taxes. I hear a lot of discussions of direct taxations, and I don't know what I'm going to learn today, but I believe unless those two other tax formats, the customs and the VAT, are not complied, the direct tax would never get generated. So we need a regime of fair enforcement. I hear a lot of discussions about expansion of TaxNet. I think we need to have, to my view, we need to have fair enforcement within the business. We are into a circular kind of, if I may say, I don't know, I should be careful choosing my words. I know, because I often get misquoted by media. And I am sitting in a media house. So I try to refrain, and today more and more I'm becoming selective in choosing my words. So I probably stop here and keep my thoughts, some of my thoughts within my minds. But like I said, that I'm truly here to learn the opportunity and to, with Mr. Stefan and his team, and I think to learn the smooth transitions pathway, how that we can do it, and how can we actually create an equitable society by creating an equitable taxation system. So thank you very much once again for inviting me, and thanks to the UK government also to support this program, and thanks to UNDP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bushira. The Commerce Advisor has some other engagements and he has to leave now, I think.
I would, but maybe I don't mind staying another
Okay.
15, 20 minutes,
Okay,
because
thank you.
I need to learn,
So-
to be very honest.
Okay, now we have a presentation by Professor
I'm a
Sharmin
passionate student
Nilormi.
here.
Professor Sharmin Nilormi will present on the economic trends, and after that she will conduct the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you all. Thank you, Honorable Advisor and esteemed colleagues who are present here. Actually, the journey has been an educative journey as well for us, because there have been almost no data on tax and gender nexus in Bangladesh, though there have been some steps in tax structure, in tax system, those considered the gender aspects where a number of gender issues are covered. Still, we don't have lots of data, and we do have a statistics division in NBR, and unfortunately, they do not cover any sex disaggregated data. And if you look into the annual reports available in the website of NBR, you can see that there is no sex disaggregated data. Even we don't know how many taxpayers, male and female, are there. First of all, our presentation goes in two separate ways. First is more generic, that Stefan has already addressed a bit of that, and the Honorable Advisor is also addressing those. And the second is why gender, how macroeconomic actually is related to gender. So that's the interesting part that actually I have been gone through since this process. So there are basically Dr. Salim Raihan is here, Firdaus Appa is here. We have been working in the white paper committee where we probed in especially with the issues on domestic resource mobilization. And as a team, we came up with few observations that is not new, but it's worth mentioning. And then we can get into the gender thing, because often when we talk about gender, and especially on the eve of a budget, then we often think that it's only the exemptions, it's only the challenges we are putting to the resource generation. And we are talking about sanitary napkins, we are talking about some specific issues related to women only. So it's not the efficiency that we talk about much when we talk about gender. So that's what we try to probe into, whether efficiency get hampered if we consider gender in the tax system. So tax-GDP ratio is very low. You can see some of, the OECD country, the least developed countries, the Asia-Pacific countries, and Bangladesh is the, one of the bottom tier country to generate a tax-to-GDP ratio. Second is it's completely mostly dependent on indirect tax, so larger contribution of indirect taxes, and we all know that indirect taxes do have impact on the daily consumption level, especially when we talk about poor and middle class people. So reliance on indirect tax actually exacerbate inequality, and you can see Bangladesh is it's largely dependent on indirect tax, and among many countries Bangladesh is not performing well in terms of relying on direct taxes. Here direct tax and inequality. So if we rely on more direct taxes, we can address inequality in a better way. That is not the case of Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is much above the threshold line who rely on the direct tax and their proportion. Number of TIN and return filing in Bangladesh. So currently there are 1.04 crore TIN numbers, and only 43 lakhs return were filled as of June 2024. 3 lakhs TIN holders have passed away. That is not being adjusted. 3 lakhs actually acquired TIN only for migration purpose. So, and a number of more are actually not actively taken any steps to provide taxes. Non-tax revenue as a share of GDP has declined, and these are non-tax revenue fell back to 0.9% of GDP in fiscal year 2023, and it remained lower than in most of the comparable countries. Direct tax expenditure, interestingly, the next slide please. The estimated tax expenditure is higher than the total direct tax collection in 2021-22, and it is from NBR data. So what we collect, how much we generate tax, more than that, we actually give exemption to taxpayers. So we really look into these losing revenues. Revenues are being lost anyway. So we don't talk about inefficiencies in that way. Only when we talk about women entrepreneurs and the daily uses of women things, then only we the policymakers often tell us that it might affect the revenue generation. So I think that's the crux of the matter, where we need to start, that only gender is not giving any inefficiency. There are lots of inefficiencies, lots of issues regarding revenue generation that we need to probe into. Please. Yeah. So I am not sure. I think you all can help us with that. Yusuf is here. Welcome, Yusuf. Yusuf actually anchored the paper in the white paper on domestic resource mobilization. So this is the this is the figure, that the percentage of total target revenue, our export duty, you can see the percentage of target revenue is only 0.01%. And that too, the revenue achieved as percentage of revised target is only 1.24%. So is that when we target any revenue, we take export on a serious note, and then we negotiate with business people who are exporters, and then we compromise in a major way in terms of getting them exemption, in terms of compromising with revenue generation. So this is the data. Okay. Persistent shortfall in achieving revenue targets, that we all know. Interestingly, when we consulted with the NBR people and the finance division people from the White Paper Commission, then we found that the target is set from the finance division in an arbitrary way. So there is no practical assessment for targeting the revenue generation, which is a key for implementation of our budget. And also there are some other, can I get back? Yeah, there are other issues relating to that. One is there is almost no coordination between NBR and the finance division regarding target setting. Second is shortfall are coming in a major way from indirect taxes, and that's from VAT. And the third is illicit capital outflow through various channels, which have significant revenue losses implications. So those are the inefficiencies that we always encounter, and we need to take notes on that in terms of efficiency. And so how gender matters. I'm sorry that the fonts are not suitable. Okay. So does it only tell about subsidy or exemptions? Otherwise, any compromise with revenue generation, or will it lead to any efficiency gain in revenue? That's the question we are probing into. Yeah. So here are some lists that you can see that where Bangladesh government actually addresses some of the issues on women in the tax system. So there are, first of all, many countries in the world, they actually have a system of paying taxes as a household level, not the individual level. In Bangladesh, we pay income taxes as an individual, not, our household income are not collated, united, and then we don't pay taxes. So as an individual, I pay, my husband pays his tax as an individual. So that is the system. And we do have different thresholds for women and men. Those are not very significant, but still there are different tiers as target. There are issues with physically challenged persons and the third genders. There are different tiers of tax tax exemptions, the first layer of tax actually. The rebate for owners of small and cottage industries. Women are largely employed in informal sector, and SME is one of the key issues where women get engaged. So that's a good issue that government is covering, a rebate for owners of small and cottage industries. Rebate on, okay, I'm sorry for my, yeah. Let me check and then, okay. Okay. Exemption for any service charge from operation of microcredit by NGOs. So, in my previous, in my previous slides, no, you don't need to get back. You keep on, on that. The second one. Yeah. So, about 10 to 11% exemptions throughout all exemptions we cover are from the exemptions of NGO income. And NGOs are, doing business through microcredit, and they are giving services to women, no denying the fact. But still, I think as they do generate revenues, I think it's a time, and as we are going along LDC graduation pathway, we might think of, having some taxes on NGOs. I might not sound very popular, but, it's a negotiation, or it's a, how you weigh.
I think you're
That's
proposing taxation on the subsidiaries, business subsidiaries of NGO, not on NGO.
For microcredit only.
Yeah, but these would be on the
On the business subsidy, yeah.
on the business subsidiaries.
Yeah,
So not
yeah.
not the holding company.
No, not the whole income, equal. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually,
No, it's okay.
yeah. You saved me, saved my life, actually. Yeah. So, next. I might be misquoted, that's the risk, yeah. So exemptions for individual who drive only agriculture income, and we all know the agriculture, women are largely engaged in agriculture sector. Exemptions of income from production of handicrafts, exemption of income derived from any SME, partial exemption for certain agricultural products, exemptions for aged care and child care operations. So these are the business ventures that gets the tax exemption and tax rebates. Seed, feed, milk, animal husbandry, fruit processing, vegetable, dairy products, baby food, agricultural instrument products, and then washing machine, blender, and some of the electronic products that are needed in the households, and women are, greatly benefited from that. Exemptions of income for providing training on human resource development, agriculture, IT, vocational, food, pharmaceuticals, and others. Those have enjoying exemptions. Poultry, fishery, and hatchery income, those are enjoying concessional rate. The thing is, when we talk about, for example, the fisheries are getting exempted, women are engaged in agriculture sector, women are getting engaged in the fisheries sector, that's quite right. But the thing is, women doesn't have large investment in this. They take part as a labor, or they take part as a very small entrepreneur. So these exemptions are largely addressing the big business who are getting engaged in these sectors. So that's one thing to look into, that, okay, we are doing it for, indirectly women may get the benefits, but largely it is giving the benefits to the large business investments. So how increased labor supply gets to economic efficiency, and it gets to greater tax net increase. As we know, the BBS data confirms that unemployment rate by education level is highest unemployment in women with tertiary education in our country. And women's participation in labor force in urban sphere has been shrinking. So from 2016 to 2013, it has been shrinking. The urban space, working space is shrinking for women. And that's alarming. We talk about demographic dividend. And in rural areas, 85% of female employment is in agriculture sector, which are 99% of their employment falls under informal category. The thing is, when we talk about demographic dividend, the proportion of women and men involved in agriculture has decreased between 2016 and 2022, but 72.6% of total employed women within 15 to 29 of age are either contributing family labor or own account labor. So if about 73% of these young people are not in the labor force, how come we expect that they will be in the labor force in the future and they will be covered in the tax net? So there is a huge efficiency gap and efficiency question. To gain efficiency, we need to expand our tax base and tax net actually. Replacement of care work is very much talked about in this domain. So work performed by the spouse who stays at home are mostly untaxed. If she decides to enter the labor force, lateral entry is very difficult in our country, and we decided to, selling the age bar for BCS is 35 for all, right, for women. And there are lots of issues on that, lots of criticisms on that, we are not getting into that. But lateral entry is very difficult for anybody, men and women in the labor force in Bangladesh, it's worrisome. So tax saving of the family is there because women don't earn and they don't pay, and they take care. These tax savings can be much lower than when the women can get into formal employment. The tax pay can be much greater than the tax saving in terms of replacement of care work. With the tax treatment of child care expenses playing a pivotal role in their decision. So it's an important issue how we get into the care work in the taxation system, and we address employment of women and the replacement of care work in the taxation system. Refundable child care tax credits providing particularly powerful in supporting low-income parents. In some of the countries, we don't have that provision, but some of the countries, especially in the OECD countries, we do have, they do have refundable child care tax credit systems. We do have Child Daycare Act 2021, and Yusuf is here. They actually Rapid surveyed, and Rapid has a research on that. And we do have 63 government daycares and more than 100 private daycare institutes, daycare outlets. And those private models remain unaffordable for low and middle income families. So interesting, earlier we saw that there are tax exemptions on daycare earning, but that doesn't address the affordability of the middle class and the poor. So what effect we are having from that exemption? That is a question. It needs to be affordable. In the tax code, we are talking about redistribution. When explicit gender differentiation exists, it is most commonly found in labor income taxation. And in the tax code, we have a code of household, head of household. We don't, use husband or wife or male or female, so there is no sex segregated data as such. So explicit gender bias in the tax code may take several different forms. It could be found in the allocation of income, provision of exemptions, deductions, allowance, or credits, as well as in the setting of tax rates, thresholds, or the responsibility for filing and paying the taxes. So there are some examples. I'm not getting detail into that. In Netherlands, till 1984, they used to grant a higher tax-free allowance to a married man than to a married woman, and until 84. In India, women had higher basic exemption than men prior to tax year 2012 and 13. In Pakistan, the basic exemption threshold for working women 2010. In UK, there is a provision. They had a married man's allowance, almost 1.6 times a single person allowance till 1997. So there are some examples. I think we will send you the presentation. So I just listed a couple of good examples at the global level. From there, we can have some lessons. In Argentina, interestingly, when a woman becomes a director of a bank or a company, the director's fee has a higher threshold for taxation if the recipient of the fee is a woman. This measure may also indirectly act as a tax incentive to encourage the appointment of non-male board members. So there are indirect issues to address, the participation of women in many ways in many countries.
I hope that,
Okay, yeah.
sorry, that did not result to the abundance of their own currency.
No. Absolutely right. Yeah.
You know, Argentina abandoned their own currency.
Yeah. So should I give examples with other countries as well?
Sorry.
I'm not getting into that. Okay.
And sometimes sarcastic.
So gender-aware tax systems also takes note on the following. So capital income, wealth, inheritance, entrepreneurial income, and all that. So women don't, they don't own land, they hardly own wealth. So, and we expect women to come under tax net. So if we want to increase the tax net, and if we want to raise the revenue out of men and women in an equitable manner and in an effective manner, we need to, provide them with those resources which can generate money and wealth, and the commensurate law as well. So it's not only the NBR that, or the finance division that only, take note on gender and tax system. There are other stakeholders and actors that they need to come too, and then only we can comprehensively think of an overarching tax system which is gender aware and effective for men and women. So that you just, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I'm helping you.
Yeah. So it is as the,
Just have to go back.
yeah. No, I think it's as, yeah. 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 You just keep going. I will tell you. Yeah. Okay. No, you are going back actually. So it's the number 37 that we are talking about.
I think it's not there. Why is it?
Yeah. Yeah, the earlier slide. Is the 37? Okay. Collaboration with civil society groups is important and critical. That's what I wanted to say. There is a slide. I think you can just go through. Is the afterwards. Yeah, go. Yeah, that's the thing. So what civil society groups can do and what NGOs can do, what the government can do to make the effective gender-aware tax system requires engagement from different set of people and professionals. So when we talk about exemptions on childcare, we need to probe into where the daycare centers are so expensive, and why these are only 100 daycare centers, and why we don't have any daycare center in Jahangirnagar University. I don't know about Dhaka University. It's about 53 years Jahangirnagar University has been running, and we don't have any daycare center in Jahangirnagar University. So you do have. Thank you. Yeah. Great. So these are the question. Often these are not the question of money, and these are not the question of efficiency as well. These are not the question of space. This is the question of intent. And we do have exemptions, we do have certain rules and regulations and directives from the High Court as well, but we don't care. So that's where we stuck, and that's why civil society women groups can get engaged to, make awareness, to act as a lobby group for the policymakers to make things effective. Yeah. So I think, Zubair, I have sent you some leading questions. So there actually we will be discussing today's discussion. So the questions are, where are the possible entry points for gender responsive tax systems in Bangladesh? How can the direct taxes, income tax and corporate tax, be made gender responsive? How can we make the indirect tax more attractive for men and women? What are the priorities for the next national budget for promoting gender responsive tax system? How can NBR and Finance Division can work together? How can civil society organization and think tanks get engaged in this process? So these are the key questions that actually we need to have discussions from yours and the insights from you. Thank you very much.
So thank you. I have a meeting with my boss, so I have to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Please. No, I am sitting here.
I don't want to be in the middle. Okay. Or you want me?
Yeah, please. No, please.
You're the speaker. You go in the middle.
We have some gender balance.
We are all blue here. Thank you very much for a very insightful presentation. I don't need to say it's difficult to find the right balance between efficiency and equity from a technical point of view, but it is possible. But as far as equity is concerned, I think as far as efficiency, we looked at a number of things that many countries are already doing globally, making it more efficient. These are all well known, and I think in Bangladesh also these have been tried to varying degrees of success. But what is now a little bit more cutting edge is use of behavioral economics. How do you incentivize people? How do you change behavior? I think many countries are trying that, and I think the technology, particularly digitalization, is helping with that. For example, you get automatically signed up for something and you have the option to opt out if you wish to. And human beings, again, because of our behavior, we tend to, once we are signed in, we don't usually opt out. So these are some of the techniques that I'm sure you're all familiar with. So these are being tried also in the tax system. Again, there are different successes. We can learn from that. But the equity part, of course, is very difficult, and we saw from the presentation the difficulties. You might try to address one thing, it might lead to another thing.
In 50 meters, your destination will be on the left.
Oh, we are going in the right direction. Good, that's good. So I think as far as getting it right, we need to constantly evaluate these
policy, if we're giving exemptions for good intentions, we need to understand what are the economic costs and benefit as well as social costs and benefit. The trouble, I think, in the public sphere is once an exemption is given or an incentive is provided, then it's hard to change it. So it's important that tax system is grounded in evidence so that the equity that we want to advance, whether it's gender, maybe particular groups, that can be evaluated. Are we really benefiting? Because there's no template as such to do that. We saw in different countries they're trying different things. So I think that's key, and that's where I think you came in and you said the engagement of the civil society and think tanks, because government needs that guidance and evidence to help formulate, try, and test these new or tweak the tax policies. So let me just stop here, and we just open.
Salim will open. Should I moderate?
Yeah, please do moderate.
Okay. Thank you very much. Salim, Dr. Salim Raihan from Dhaka University, and he is the Executive Director of SANEM. The Chairman of SANEM, right? Executive Director. Okay.
My Chairman is sitting next to me.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, Professor Nilormi, for this presentation. I think you have touched upon many issues. Towards the end, you talked about the gender perspective. So probably I'll just start with that. I see that I think we'll have a lot of agreement. I don't see any areas of disagreement when it comes to reforming the taxation system, because we have been talking about this for quite a long time. And there are two aspects to that. One is that we often come up with very technical solutions, and I think these are very needed. And a huge list of technical solutions are there, suggested. And unfortunately, many of them are not implemented, have not been implemented, because the second part is that, I think, which is more important, is the political economy perspective. Why these are not implemented? Why our tax system still remains very inefficient and underdeveloped? I think so. That part needs to be kind of discussed, and it needs to be flagged out quite seriously. But before getting into that, I just thought that to talk about this gender perspective, because take, for example, our biggest industry, the ready-made garments industry, where some estimates show that it's 4 million workers, but though the recent estimates probably it's less than that. But if we even take around 50 to 60% of them women, have we made them really taxpayers the last 3 decades? If you look at their wage level, it's probably below the poverty line income. So I think I'm raising this question because that's related to the kind of pattern of structural transformation which took place in Bangladesh. That doesn't really help having a good tax system. So even from the very gender perspective. So I fully agree with you the way you presented because we are part of this white paper exercise on this tax-GDP ratio. Government needs revenue. It has a strong equity perspective too. But I think the very recent experience of the inflationary situation, where it is also felt that the tax policy or the revenue policy is not really aligned with the monetary policy. So this is a serious problem, where I think the tax authority, they don't really talk to the monetary policy authority. The Bangladesh Bank and the NBR or the finance division, they don't really exchange their policies with each other, and there is no kind of coordination. I see there is a serious problem, and that needs to be looked at very seriously. One thing is that when it comes to reform, because as you also mentioned, I'm quite sure in this dialogue, a lot of suggestions would also emerge. But as I said earlier, that the main fundamental problem is the political economy issue. And in our white paper, the institution chapter, what I wrote, I mentioned it's a kind of anti-reform coalition. That means you have the corrupt bureaucrats, corrupt politicians, and corrupt businessmen, the kind of alliance they had, and that really kind of made things very difficult for undertaking, various reform agendas, because we have been talking about reforming the NBR for quite a long period. Even there is a resistance from internally, from NBR, not to undertake reforms. So I think this is something probably need to look at, because I'm quite sure that many suggestions will emerge. Even the interim government, they are trying to undertake some reform. But are we very much aware of where the resistance would come from, and how do you diffuse those resistance? Just to end with one note, is that because in your title is the roundtable discussion about, is also mentioned about the LDC graduation. Bangladesh is set to graduate out from the LDC status in November 2026, unless there is any kind of change. But I think it's kind of going to be obvious. But after that, the dependence on custom duties is going to be difficult, because Bangladesh should be under international scanner, a WTO scanner more strongly than in the previous time, to align or to reform its tariff policy. And I think there would be needed to reduce tariffs in many cases. And at the same time, since the government is interested to pursue FTAs with many countries, so revenues from custom duties would be an important issue. So in that case, income tax and VAT, how do you really, are we on the right direction? So I think these would be very, very important questions to answer. Thank you very much for a very kind attention.
So you were talking about non-NBR taxes and the customs.
No, income tax and VAT, of course, these two.
Okay. Yeah. May I have the privilege to ask Bidisha first? Then thank you. Dr. Bidisha from Dhaka University. She is the Vice Chancellor of Dhaka University right now, but we actually acclaim her as her contribution in the arena of economics.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction. First of all, from a broader perspective, when we are talking about taxation, how we can generate tax. So one is the indirect and direct, definitely. So when the gender chips in, then the issue comes that we definitely need, the fundamental thing is we need more income, if you think about the direct taxation, and from the woman, and then we can have the tax base from the woman. If we think about not in the context of having more revenue generation perspective, and if that is the case, then we have to think about the fundamental question of like how we can bring more women in the labor market and how we can remove the obstacle that the women are facing to bring into the labor market. And when we are talking about the labor market, we also have to think about 2-3 at least my additional points. One is like, as Dr. Salim Rahan was pointing out, a large number of women are doing some work which is like in the informal sector, often with a very low pay. So if that is the case, from that point of view, we cannot actually generate revenue from the, that aspect. So if that is one point, that means how from a revenue generation point of view, one is how we can actually improve the scope of employment generation. Like given the macro scenario of the country, overall, obviously it's important that we focus more on the CSMEs. That should be the core. And when we are talking about, but at the same time, you also have to think that how much women are earning in the CSMEs. And we have been doing some work on with the women entrepreneurs, and what we have observed is like one is some fundamental issues, constraints are there. So one is like the constraint that when we are talking to the woman, or when we go to work with them, then we find that most of the women, they are concentrated in some specific sectors. So when they are in the specific sector, so now if we blend the domestic revenue mobilization with the gender equity and inclusive development, then the point comes now that if these women, they are actually located in some specific sectors, then they don't have much opportunity, one, to realize domestic resource for the economy, two, for their own betterment or from the point of view of inclusive development as well. So, and here actually I think there are, one issue is related to the issue which is very closely related to the overall gender-centric supply side constraint and the demand side constraint as well, because when we are looking at the supply side, often the statistics shows that women are not more inclined not to go to the bank, and there are some constraints as well. So how to make the credit available to them, and that is one thing, and there are some supply side questions. Secondly is like there can be some very basic policy, there needs to be some very basic policy changes. So for example, the trade license, because of the having the trade license and fulfilling all the documents also, why the women don't go to the bank? In many cases they replied that one is related to the documentation, the financial literacy, that is actually constraining them. So these are very minor points that is actually constraining them to be bigger enterprises, bigger entrepreneurs, which can be helpful for the domestic resource mobilization on one hand, and also for inclusive development as well. And for the trade license perspective, I think it's very crucial that we think about some policies which give some exemption in this type of aspect. So like there can be some very basic trade license documents, initial document and some provisions, which is based on having based on the national ID maybe. So if that is the case, in that case that means like basically we can actually bring more women into the entrepreneurial activities, and that can make them usefully contribute to the CSME's development as well. So that is one point. There is also another fundamental point that is like that was, I think Nilormi Appa was mentioning, is like the demographic dividend and the demographic aspect that we are having, because in the context of Bangladesh, where the youth labor force that we have, and when we look at the youth labor force, that a significant percentage, I think probably 18% or 20% of the women who are youth, they are not in the not in the education, not in the labor market, and not in the training. That means actually that we are not being able to realize the potential that they can offer. So that is also another area that we should concentrate and we should work on. The third point is the fundamental point. We should think about the mechanism as well. So one is the tax base. Second, designing the tax base in an equitable and gender-friendly manner. Second is like the mechanism. So there can be options like the blended financing, the gender equality bond, which are not very popular in the context of Bangladesh, but we should go forward and look through these mechanisms to bring more gender justice and as well as revenue mobilization, to have both these things at the same time. The third point, I know there are a lot of people, so I will make it short. So the third point is, I think, one fundamental problem that we have been, as a researcher, we have been facing is we don't have gender segregated data. And until and unless we don't have gender segregated data, we don't actually know the real broader picture. And until we don't know the real broader picture, it is really difficult to have very gender friendly and gender sensitive policies, and that is something often constraining to design effective gender-friendly fiscal and taxation policies. And that is, I think this is the high time that we should actually prioritize to have data based on the gender. And my final point I would like to mention is, like, when we are talking about the employment, the issue that has been highlighted is the issue of bringing more women in the labor market, and there I think the issue which is very closely related is the issue of having safe transportation, to having daycare facilities, and all of these things. It's not only about the giving tax exemption, but it's also about the quality and the endorsement. Like, it's not that if we tax exempt, often that may not actually help the woman to bring into the labor market, because often it depends on the taxation burden. Who will bear the burden of taxation, or if there is an exemption, whether the woman who is going to send their child to the daycare, whether that woman will be benefited or not. So that type of analysis is absent. So we have to design the policies to have both of these things together, so that we can generate mobility on one side, and at the same time having it in an equal, based on the inclusive development perspective. That is something that we should think about. Thank you.
Yeah, please get yourself introduced, and so that we can all on the same page.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Bozul Khondakar. I'm chairman of SANEM and also with Policy Research Institute. Few suggestions, just like we know all the issues about taxes in Bangladesh, inefficient, inequitable tax, one of the lowest in the world, and there have been a lot of studies also, I think, but we didn't see much implementation or reform in this area. So which has been, like the major source of problem in Bangladesh. In terms of gender aspect with the taxation, or like female or women compared to men. And in this area, this is more or less we accept that, and we have this system already in work. In terms of consumption, I think we are gender blind in terms of, because we don't have enough data, and also but we can actually start looking into which of the product and service are more gender sensitive or women sensitive. And can we actually afford to have lower taxes? I think these are nightmare also in terms of implementation, right? Yeah. I think the NBR person is here, a member, or so in terms of whether we have, in the consumption tax, it's very difficult to have different kinds of taxes. We know that very inefficient, which we are having in VAT also, like we have several tax rates, and which are basically making life more difficult for everyone in terms of, like a business person, he doesn't know how to plan his tax or cost, because it's in the discussion of the NBR and other people that if you put that into this code, I mean, you can have 5% tax, or if you put that into that code, it is 15% tax. So I think this is also very difficult. Like we can identify products, services which are gender sensitive, but should we go for different tax rates for those kind of things? This is an issue need to be think, because we also need to be think that, okay, this should be done, but whether it's inefficient or efficient, or whether we can actually, the benefit should reach the intended beneficiary. So that's another. In terms of Bidisha just said, also in terms of we can go beyond revenue, we can also look into non-tax side, that how we can also see the non-tax in terms of gender sensitivity. So that's another way we can think of. But overall, I think that it's more efficient to look into the expenditure side, by which we can support women also through the, in addition to tax side. I think there are lots of scope for redistribution from taxes to expenditure, like you talked about care services and other, which are one of the major problem for their labor force participation, not the tax as such, because most of them are in informal sector anyway. So from formal to informal to formalization, we need to think of different way. Like
Okay.
taxation is not the issue at this point, to me at least. So we need to think of like in a broader perspective how we can help women through both tax and also expenditure. Thank you.
Just to ask one question on that, are you suggesting to probe into highest data? Will it be effective?
You can think, you can try, okay. We have done some study in terms of looking into incidence analysis, looking into HS data, like.
Okay,
So you can try.
okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Salim, for coming. Please, Ifto, yeah. Please get yourself introduced. Yeah.
But so far,
Yeah.
I haven't seen a hand.
Thank you very much. My name is Alamgir. I am representing FBCCI. I am Secretary General working there. We had actually a lot of workshops and seminars with the chairman of NBR and the customs officials, with business leaders in our FBCCI office. And some of the issues discussed here, we also discussed in those seminars. And I'd just like to share with you what are the specs and the aspirations of the business community there. First and foremost, while they discuss the things, they express their dissatisfaction, the kind of harassment, the kind of the long procedures that have been taken by the NBR for assessing their tax. Number one. Number two, they also mentioned that the AIT, Advanced Income Tax, that has been taken by the NBR from the business community is actually it's not appropriate in terms of rules and regulations. And sometimes they are giving more, but at the end of the year they are not getting that back. I think this is a kind of arbitrariness, whimsical procedure that should be, I think, there should not be there. And we talked it in when the Reform Commission came to our office also, and we visited their office. We many times we told that, but still it has not been solved. So if this kind of situation going on, and when you are talking about the women inclusion into the tax system as well as those who are doing the business, I think this creates a kind of it's a lacking in the trust built. So what we can do is that if you like to increase the tax base, I think that you have to take into account what the business committee is saying.
Yep.
And a lot of association chambers working in our office, they actually express their dissatisfaction, I am telling it. Number two is that another point they mentioned is that they have been clobbered by the tax department time and again. The honest, the sincere businessmen, those who are giving tax every year properly, they have been clobbered every time. Their tax base has not been taken to the grassroots level where a lot of businesses could be done. Sorry. There are a lot of taxes could be harnessed from district, from or sub-district level. There are a lot of businesses that are going on, but they are not under the tax base of the NBR. They are not under the radar of NBR. So there is like a kind of tax evasion.
Yep.
And that has been also told in our workshop in FBCCI. And apart from that, I think what we have mentioned in that meeting is that NBR should start at the earliest, the automation, the single window service of the NBR. If that is there, like the Singapore single trade or they can also be without any kind of corruption. Once the introduction of single window there, they can submit their file online, they can pay their payments on e-payment, and they can get the certificate. But now you have to go time and again for many documents, and it's a very lengthy process. I think these things should be taken care of irrespective of gender. And once this has been done, I think a lot of facilitations from the NBR side will be ensured, and the trust building, which is now there is a deficit between the business committee and the NBR, that should be that will be removed. And for the one thing I didn't find in your presentation here, post-LDC graduation, post-LDC, but you only mentioned the gender perspective of the thing. But how we should as a nation should prepare ourselves when in 2026 a lot of incentives to the government and a lot of the privileges and perks will be taken away. How we will get ourselves ready? Maybe we should go for PTA, we should go for regional agreements, and that should be also, I think, should be pointed out here. And also, not only the garment sector. If you like to give some incentives, you should give to other sectors also. Why only garment sector? There are a lot of sectors coming up. They are very efficient, and they are actually driving the economy also nowadays. So relying on one sector, it has its vulnerability also. I think that should be taken care of, and that should be in the suggestion also. And regarding the, I think our build and others have mentioned here that the wage level, if it is below the subsistence level, you cannot have it, you can just make the pot boiling. How you can think of taxing those people, especially ladies, those who are working in the garments and other sectors? They cannot make their two ends together. I think this is a very serious issue. And in the recent newspaper also found that the real wage have been, for the last 3 years, they have made a comparison. The real wage actually not up to the mark. It's even went down. So when these are the realities, and I think this should be focused on the it has been eroded, and what will be the consequence? They must understand that. I think that this is all from a side. I think this should be, I think, what I am mentioning is the voice of the business community. I think that should be reflected in your paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have correctly addressed actually some of the very pertinent issues. So it's not only tax to bring the economic efficiency. There are a lot of other issues beyond tax that we need to get into. In terms of LDC graduation, actually we do have works and publications on financing gender in the eve of LDC graduation. So those are issues with tax and beyond tax things. And you are correctly addressing the very alarming wage level of labor. So as you see in the presentation, if I'm sorry if I misunderstood, we don't suggest anything. Those cannot be get into that threshold of tax income. We actually encourage women to get into employment with efficiency. That's why we had the presentation on the unemployment with tertiary women who can get into the job market, and probably they do have potential to become a taxpayer. That's where we are actually focusing on, but it's worth mentioning the expenditure and consumption side of tax systems as well. Thank you very much, and we really will be getting engaged with FBCCI and Women Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much. So this is Nazmul Hussain Ovi. I am from International Labour Organization, ILO. I'm working as a senior program officer and also in the capacity of economist for the country office. So I think I will compliment on few things those have been already told, especially on wages and the labor market aspects. So I think what is very important to see that why labor market things are important here, it came in your presentation and the other discussions as well. I think tax policies and tax regimes affect severely and significantly the labor market institutions. I mean, meaning minimum wage, collective bargaining, employment protection legislation, and unemployment benefits. So, and the easiest way that all we agreed and we have seen that our country has been doing is putting the pressure on the consumers by increasing VAT mostly as the easiest and easy picking tool, which eventually affects the workers in all forms, like workers with white collar jobs, blue collar jobs, us, informal workers, and everybody. So, and then the problem is, you see, I mean, in the country, we don't have a very well-defined wage policy and minimum wage policy. There are minimum wage boards for 44 sectors who do not update regularly the wage levels except for RMG and only few. And also we don't have a national wage policy yet to decide the benchmarks that how different sectors should approach to set up the different kinds of minimum wage for those sectors. And when these instruments are not there, setting up a tax policy, tax regime, VAT, obviously can become ad hoc. that we currently observe, that how it affects the people who are earning below the minimum wage, close to the minimum wage, or in a declining real wage trend that we have been seeing for over the last 2 decades in our country. How does it affect the poverty and inclusion and equality as a whole? So that is why, and also the whole idea and the connection of these labor market institutions is directly related to the political economy of the broader picture. Because if you don't have a collective bargaining going effectively with the employers and the workers on the basis of the tax that comes out suddenly from a Pandora's box through whichever government we have seen so far, and if you don't have employment protection legislation even in the formal and semi-formal sectors, where the burden of the tax will not be pushed towards the workers by laying them off, and some unemployment benefits are missing in those formal industry and factories as well in many cases in different sectors. So what happens that in your voting system, when the voting system doesn't work, that we have experienced over the past few years, that the voting issues, the governance issues were criticized heavily in the country, then you tend to don't care about your voters in a country, which are your workers eventually.
Yep.
They give you a vote for an election to elect you for the right policy making decisions, or for the 5 years or the tenure. And then that oligopoly or monopoly or combination of joining hands with employers and the big businesses comes out from a political point of view. And that is why the labor market dynamics with the labor market institutions, how it affects the whole equilibrium from labor market to the political economy of it, is very important. And ideally, this is something that I wanted to reflect. And maybe on the last thing, because I think the presentation started when Stefan said that the idea is to financing the SDGs and financing of the development goals by reforming the tax policies and regime and coming up with the good instruments which will eventually promote social justice and inclusive society. Now, there is a question that through whatever tax policy we want to do that, we definitely have to bear in mind that it cannot be with the easy picking like VAT, because it is, counter intuitive
Yep.
and productive as well. Because if we are saying that we want to achieve development goals by improving our own financing and revenue strengths, then we are targeting the VAT and easy picking by putting it on the consumer shoulder, which will eventually and is eventually leading a larger inequality and working poverty at the end of the day. So that is why it is not actually helping to reach those development goals and SDGs. On the other hand, contrary, because I was involved in the integrated national financing framework with UNDP from ILO's side, INFF, we argued very strongly with the ministry like Finance Division and the Planning Commission that if the country needs to finance its development through a rigorous private sector financing enhancement, how the tax policy will eventually work with better coordination with the employers, businesses through NBR and Finance Division is essentially the thing that politically needs to be addressed and also implemented. So I think these are the things that I wanted to compliment. Hope these are useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Very useful. And you correctly mentioned that it is a continuum. It's not that we will achieve this target in this budget or in this way we will address all the problems. But it needs to be a continuum, and we need to set goals where we have to be, we shall be, and through this process where we are heading towards. So we actually are not going for 9th five-year plan. Let's see what government is coming up with the interim financing plan. We are expecting the report very soon. Thank you very much. Okay. Appa.
No, you can go.
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. This is Robiul Islam and I'm from Asian Development Bank.
Okay.
So I will just get into details because I think Professor Yusuf will speak on the white paper findings, and acting on the white paper issue, Professor Yusuf will focus on, I think. But I will pick on two issues from here. First and foremost is we are talking about gender responsive tax system. And as we look forward to LDC graduation, the things that will also eventually come up with also making it disability inclusive, the tax system, and also it is climate responsive. So when we talk about inclusive and resilient growth, these all has to be incorporated. So first thing. Now, the thing is that when we do the tax policies, what the white paper has already recommended, and we have been talking about the separation of tax policy and administration. Okay, now what we can do very immediately, because we know that this is a very long bureaucratic process and may take years to do, is I think setting up an data analytics and research unit. NBR has one, but it is not that much functional, we know that. So we take help from the experts. NBR can take the technical assistance from the different development partners and who are experts on that, and make it a functional one, so that before any tax policy takes into effect, we do an poverty and social assessment. If we do any exemption, we do an analysis that what are the implications of that. So making it into an institutional setup can help very effectively, and I think this can be done very swiftly in few months. And with regards to this, I think money is not a problem, because we many development partners are already sitting here. Money is not a problem, but the will to do this is a problem, and I think the interim government is correctly positioned to pursue this sort of reforms. So that's one thing. So setting up in data analytics and research unit supported by perhaps development partners, and all obviously should be led by the NBR. And the another thing is that when we talk about this, the NBR does not have any mandate to ensure equity or efficiency. That is the mandate of Minister of Finance, right? Because NBR's goal is to collect revenues. They have been given a target and they have to collect those revenues. So I think that should be coordinated with the Ministry of Finance. And the Ministry of Finance should assess that these sort of assessments, whether it is compromising the poverty and social issues, whether the tax exemptions that are granted that are evidence-based or not. Then another thing is that when we talk a lot about the automation, what we don't talk about is the fragmented automation system. So we only think about that putting the e-return in the system, and then how do we monitor that those are being actually collected and the actual evaluation is being done or not. So we have to go for an integrated automation system, and I think the interim government can actually start this in collaboration with the Bangladesh Bank and other corporate companies, businesses, and the other taxpayer unit. And I think our honorable advisor has picked a very right term. The fair enforcement won't be possible if we go for an integrated automation system. So that's the another thing. And finally, the issue that was raised about the VAT imposed that was done recently. I think in the beginning you already pointed about the behavioral economics aspect. So I think if we want to gain the trust of the taxpayers, then it has to be shown that, okay, what sort of money has been actually collected. So we don't have a system to actually assess that, and then how it is being spent. So so setting up a system for this, I think, is needed. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So you are talking about the transparency on tax expenditure, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, that is very needed, and there the civil societies can really probe into.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, you correctly mentioned currently the statistics division is almost of no use, because that is the statement coming from NBR people actually. So definitely that is the area where development partners can be effective, in partnership. Firdaus Appa.
Okay. Thank you, Nilurmi. Actually, I was very much overwhelmed when we are listening the presentation. This was, I think, definitely very comprehensive, and you tried to highlight different segments and aspects of the gender dimension of the tax-related issues. So let me just start with some 2-3 points before I go for my own points. Number one is that in the title, I haven't seen any gender issues, so that's why I thought that it is not specifically for the gender dimension issues. This is one thing. And post-LDC graduation points, I believe these are very, very important because we are almost close to the 2026 timeline. So this is one thing. Taking cue of these issues, I would actually try to understand that whether you are, in most of the cases, you use the word women, whether it is women entrepreneur or women labor or those who are earning some money. I think both.
No, actually the whole population
not
of women.
the women entrepreneur
No,
specifically, but from the context of the women tax related issues.
Yeah.
Women entrepreneur related issues, I think
Very pertinent.
has got very, very much important significance. As the NBR people are present here, we have seen that a number of I think supportive tax related policies have been announced by the government,
Yeah.
so that the women entrepreneur can come up really within the tax base, or they can contribute perfectly with their entrepreneurship. This was one of my points I would like to mention here. And the second thing is that while government has announced a number of women supportive policies, tax policies, most of the cases we have seen that they are not being able to utilize the benefits of these policies. I will give you some of the specific example. But the second point I would like to mention here, Dr. Raihan has mentioned that why not, or he has referred the RMG workers, a significant number of RMG workers are in place in our country, 3 or 4 lakh, 30 or 40 lakh, something like that. They are not within the purview of the tax, but it is not. I do disagree, because you know that we all pay VAT, and very recently the amount of VAT, about 100 products have come up under the purview of VAT, and 12,000 crore taka will be accumulated from these VAT. And some specific small business entrepreneurs, say RMG, local RMG business entrepreneurs have come up within this purview, and lots of things are there. By this way, they are paying VAT, they are paying tax. And there is also another provision, is that there is a provision of the minimum tax. In the urban area, 5,000 taka is the minimum tax to be paid by a taxpayer who are not within the purview of the tax layer, and in the rural area, I think it is 3,000 or something like that, and so different types of city based, it differs, I believe. So it is not true that, may not be true that RMG workers are not within the purview of the tax system. They are paying tax in a different way, not the income tax, as they are. That is the issue. That is the issue. That is the issue. Let me just taking cue of my points, I would like to add one very specific point first, is that recently, after the announcement of the SRO, one specific important area which has been announced by NBR for supporting the women entrepreneur, there was a threshold of 50 lakhs taka VAT. They were not within they may not be within the VAT registration. This is voluntary. They can take the VAT registration, or they can be out of the VAT VAT registration. This has been reduced to 30 lakh taka. This is one point, recently, very recently.
So it was previously 50 lakh, right?
But they have reduced it, that the exemption limit has been reduced to 30 lakh taka now. And similar is the case for the very important is the turnover tax. 3 crore taka were allowed as the turnover tax, where they have to pay a little bit lower tax, that is 4% tax, where the highest limit in our country was 15%. So, but you know, these ceiling has also been reduced to 50 lakh taka, from 3 crore to 50 lakh taka. So these are some of the issues definitely will hamper the small entrepreneur and the small women entrepreneurs specifically. And let me just allow to tell some of to raise some of the points which are, similarly impactful for both men and women. Say the indirect tax, the dependency on the indirect tax has been mentioned and raised by the keynote presenter. At the moment, it is 30% from the direct taxes and 66% from indirect taxes. Yeah. Interestingly, in the year 2017-18, it was 36% from the direct tax. Why it has been reduced, I do not know exactly. Rather, it should be increased further. So tax net is narrow, tax base is narrow, it is true. Interestingly, I do not know the reason. RGSC registered entrepreneur number is 2.88 lakhs, even though the information is December 2023, it may be a bit higher. Out of this whole RGSC registered companies, I have seen only 8.2% pay their taxes. I believe that those are the people who are eligible to pay tax. They should come under the tax net. By this way, the tax net can be increased. And also, I have seen that from NBR, the registered taxpayer, the number of registered taxpayer, as she was mentioning that the gender disaggregated data is not available, this is okay. But we are not always very, I think, clearly get the total registered taxpayer number. It is different in different cases. We get some of the information from the press report. So one of the very important aspects in regard to the tax related issues, why the tax net is not increasing and why people willing to keep themselves aloof from tax paying in our country, could be one of the reason is that the TDS, tax deduction at source. Around 63% of the total income tax is deducted at source. This is one thing. And considering adding the withholding tax, it is about 83%. And interestingly, we have made a small, I think, research out of this, because this TDS is not, I think, refundable, or if it is refundable, it takes too much of time. So by this way, we have seen for the year 2022-23, about 86,600 crore investment loss, while we are seriously looking for investment. And what we have also found is that for this investment loss, about 3,60,000 employment loss, and working capital loss is about 14,000 crore. So these TDS issues, I think FBCCI friend has already mentioned, is one of the serious suffering and keep people aloof for not paying taxes, because they know that once the tax has been deducted from source, they will not get this money refunded. So a very nice, acceptable, modern, automated tax refunded policies should be in place as soon as possible. So it will encourage people to pay tax, because they will understand that they will get the tax deducted at source instantly. We have seen that in Singapore, they give it within 3 hours time. In India also, the time frame is within the 3 months. Why not in Bangladesh? So this is one of the point I would like to mention. Similar is the case in regard to the VDS, that is the VAT deducted at source. 60% of the total tax has been collected at source. VAT deducted at source. So these are the issues. I think there are a number of tiers, as has been mentioned already. In the custom duty, we have seen there are 12 types of taxes. In case of VAT, we have also seen there are different types of taxes. So these truncated taxes is not possible to take credit. So this is one of the reasons that VAT, the main purpose of the VAT, that is tax on tax, to be avoided, is not, I think, fully implementable in our country, because tax credit is not automatic. So let me just take in cue of these issues. I would like to add something in regard to the LDC graduation issues, because this is very much important in our case. We will have to go for MFN-based trade, tax-related issues. So in that respect, NBR is working hard. We are also closely worked with NBR on the tariff rationalization study and some of the other issues, because there was a core committee in the past and they were having meeting regularly, and we have seen that NBR has done excellent job during this time. I believe these are continuing, these activities are continuing. And taking cue of this work and activities, I would like to add here that trade facilitation agreement, the different types of article, this has already been started but not fully implemented, half-hearted or fragmented, as he was mentioning very rightly. Say Article 1, pre-arrival process. So these are some of the risk management, post-clearance audit. These are the issues I think it needs to be implemented very quickly. Border agency agreement, these are the issues. Another very important point I would like to add here is the AEO, Authorized Economic Operator, and how SMEs, that is the women and small entrepreneur, can be integrated, because AEO policy, what I have seen is that the threshold criteria is very high, 10 crore or something like that. So if this is the limit, then small and I think women entrepreneurs will not be able to get the, I think, benefit of this authorized economic operator or AEO. Last point I would like to mention here is that while we are having this study in collaboration with NBR, we have seen that GATT Article 2, you are aware about it, we have a schedule of commitment there. And there are some, I think these are all technical issues, that the bound rate that we have agreed and we have identified and very clearly assessed that what are the amounts for which we are maintaining the bound rate, because we will not be able to go beyond the bound rate. But there are some ODC, that is other duties and charges, which include supplementary duty, because in our business we are extremely dependent, significantly dependent on the supplementary duties issues. When government cannot collect required taxes, they just impose the supplementary duty. And it is sometimes, I do not like to use this word, but definitely sometimes it is arbitrarily, without asking, as my friend has already mentioned, without consulting with the business entrepreneurs. So if these are the cases going on some more time, definitely the common citizen or the taxpayer will not be encouraged to pay their taxes, which is very much required, because our tax GDP ratio is hugely, I think, much less than the other I think comparative countries. So in that respect, last point I would like to take here is that some policies have already been identified by NBR itself and with the support of some I think experts and consultants. What are the steps to be taken for meeting the post-LDC graduation stages? This needs to be implemented properly so that we can face the challenges that we are going to, I think, definitely after LDC graduation we will have to face. These are the issues. And cash subsidies also, you have taken some steps, and some of the cash subsidies has already been withdrawn. So I believe that that we will have to prepare ourselves to have a very nice tax policies. Definitely it will help the women entrepreneurs, similarly the whole taxpayers within the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Firdausa, for very helpful interventions. Please.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Wasim Zakaria. I am the co-chair for the Standing Committee on Sustainability at BJMEA, and I also happens to be a garment manufacturer and exporter. Let me start where Firdausa has left off, mentioning about the challenges we're going to face for the post-LDC graduation. I think we all know that the biggest challenge we're going to face is that GSP facility that is going to go off from 2026. And or if it is 2029, that provided that the government can successfully applies for 3 more years to get the preferential trade benefits that we are getting. So be it 2026 or 2029, we have to have preferential bilateral trade agreements with the exporting countries. Otherwise, we won't be very competitive compared to other countries, competing countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia. And also, we must also keep a note that once the GSP facility goes, the double transformation rules of origin will kick in. So at that time, then we will require fabrics, materials, and trims and accessories to be produced locally. So that will be another challenge. Speaking of taxation, particularly equitable tax system, as a manufacturer and an exporter, we pay 1% of our FOB, and the tax is paid at source. So if you look at let's consider the Incoterm is FOB, in that case, 70% of that FOB is the price of the raw materials.
Okay.
But we are being taxed on FOB. So 70% actually it's not any of our income. We have to pay back that 70% to our suppliers. So that remaining 30% is our cost, and also the cutting and CM, which we call it, and also our profit, which is very, very low. So what is happening here is that the raw material, if we source the raw material from Bangladesh, the fabric, trims, and accessories, particularly most of the suppliers are considered or deemed as the exporter. So they're paying 1% on the fabric, trims, and accessories. But then again, when it is getting transformed into a garment, then again the government is taxing 1%. So we are getting taxed twice, actually, for a garment. Another point to consider is that since the tax is taken at source, so if we are in a profit or in a loss, still we are being taxed. So there is no respite if the enterprise is making a loss or a profit. Another point to consider is that, as you know, that whatever tax incentive we get, we are being taxed again 10% on that. So these are the points I wanted to talk about regarding the on tax. Speaking of sustainability, I don't think there's enough for incentive for, let's say, green tax incentive or carbon tax consideration. I'll give you 2 examples. An enterprise like our factory or our garments factory, if we want to install solar panels, in that case, let's say we import it from China or some other foreign countries, it comes under heavy, very high tax. And also, the waste material, if we sell our waste material to a recycler, we pay, I think more than, if I'm correct, more than 20% tax. So this is not going to help if we are in the sustainability practices, and if we really want all the enterprises to work towards meeting the sustainable development goals by 2030. So perhaps government can look into these issues. Those are the points I wanted to discuss. So thanks to UNDP and also to TBS for inviting me to participate in this roundtable discussion. Thank you.
I have a question. So as we see, the tax exemption from export is almost 100%.
Tax exemption from export?
Export.
What?
Because, the tax exemptions are, I showed it here, right?
Right. Reduced rate. I think it was more than 12.75%, something like that. Yeah.
So is the income tax percentage of total target revenue on export duty is 0.01%, revenue achieved as percentage of revised target is 1.24%. That I didn't get it, why it is so low?
I think that that could be the tax at source. That's the 1% we are paying on Incoterm. Yeah.
0.01 is percentage of total target revenue. That's understood because we do have a low export base. But revenue achieved as percentage of revised target is 1.24% from export duty. That's the worry. Okay, so you are telling that is the tax at source that is contributing to that.
Correct.
Okay.
FOB.
On FOB. Okay.
That is very interesting.
Yes.
It cost them use.
Okay. Thank you. So, yeah, you too, please. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Sumaya. I'm the head of sustainability and communications for PRAN RFL Bangladesh. So thank you very much for the organizers for having me here. So, you know, a lot of the discussions, especially from BGMA side, have been kind of, I echo, you know, those aspects in terms of, you know, ease of doing business. But, you know, when we are discussing about a post-LDC graduation and what does a resilient and sustainable economy look like, you know, there are a lot of indicators that we have when we measure what takes a country from LDC to a middle income country. You know, most of the indicators are quantitative. So we put a number to it, we put thresholds on it, and then we cross the thresholds and we go on to, you know, the next level. However, we often oversee the qualitative aspects of, you know, graduating to a, you know, middle income country, and what does that really entail? And so, you know, when you've, you know, highlighted in your presentation that the Gini coefficient is so high, you know, inequality is so high that, you know, we're pushing up through the threshold, but the bottom of the pyramid is still suffering. You know, they're still feeling, you know, brunt of the, you know, economic measures and the tools that the government is taking for the greater good. But, you know, when somebody's income is 10,000 taka and their essentials are being taxed, and then, you know, you've raised a really interesting questions on how do we make indirect tax attractive. You know, in most cases, people would like to pay it, whether it's direct or indirect, when they see that the government is providing the necessary services to the general population. And oftentimes, and not just the services, but the quality services. And oftentimes we see that that's missing, especially in Bangladesh. And so when we have, and when we continue to put tax on essential goods and services, there's, you know, people are going to start evading it. People are going to try to see how they can, you know, get that extra 500 taka saved for their family. So we really need to also look at the, you know, the micro level and really talk to the people on the ground on, you know, what do they really feel about the taxation? You know, what are their opinions? Because we, you know, when we're sitting in this roundtable, you know, with representing companies and, you know, institutions, it's also important to really hear about the people on the ground and what and how it affects them. So that's one thing. Another thing is that when we graduate to post-LDC, and as echoed by BGMA, you know, we're going to start not getting a lot of the benefits that we've already started, but what we are getting currently. And so in that aspect, how can the government really support the local industries, you know, local companies on, you know, producing goods and services that can be, you know, import substitutions. You know, how can we really look at those aspects? And again, working in a very phasing out or phasing in way rather than taking big, bold decisions, especially in the economic side, that might not really have the, you know, effect or, you know, the popularity aspect that, you know, often that we want to try to have. So that's you know, my comment here.
Thank you very much. Import substitution is very much on the table, I guess, and we need to really bank on that. We need to do, you know, proper assessment and proper strategies to, you know, do that. Yeah, please. Then Yusuf, I will be back.
Thank you, Appa. So, good afternoon. I'm Ronak Jahan. I'm working in Care Bangladesh as Director, Women and Youth Empowerment Program. So thank you so much for UNDP for inviting us. So I just want to discuss this, that when we are talking about equity, we need to understand the equity word more, like how we are doing equity, or for whom we are doing equity. Because in the presentation, we have seen that a lot of interesting policies are there for women. But Nilormi Appa was sharing that, are those really for women or the business holders? That's one question. And one thing I feel that was missing from the morning in our discussion, that what, as a woman, I'm getting as a taxpayer from the government. Like the public spaces or the public transport are like safe for women or not, or the other gender people, are those like safe for women or the other genders? And also, are we getting free healthcare from the public hospitals or healthcare institutions? And as today we are here, as UNDP has organized this kind of discussion, I think as a CSO and development organizations, they are organized more and more discussion about this, because like the general people like us, we see tax as a very like technical and difficult issue. So I think as a development practitioners, we can talk about more and more and can take this easier way to the mass people. And also because, you know, I believe that it is equally important to transform the behavior and also to set the mindset of the people to pay tax, because we do have a lot of good or strengthened systems, but when till that way, when the behavior transformation doesn't happen, or we cannot achieve what we are discussing or planning. And maybe as a development organization, we can build capacity of the policy implementers, implementing organizations, because Appa was mentioning that we don't know how many people, like how many women and men are paying tax. So we don't have gender disaggregated data. So that only from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Raunak. Then I will go to Dr. Yusuf, who actually anchored the domestic resource mobilization paper on in the white paper. And he is the professor of Dhaka University at the Development Studies Department, and he is with RAPID, right? You are the executive director? Oh, yeah, the executive director of RAPID, a national think tank. Thank you.
Thank you, Appa. আমার মনে হয় বাংলায় বলতে পারি, কোনো ফরেনার নাই যেহেতু মানে
Foreigner
আছে
is the ways he's
okay,
here.
okay.
We consider him
Yeah.
as...
No problem. No, no, it's okay, yeah. It's okay, yeah. I thought he's a Bengali person. Okay, no worry. Thank you for your very comprehensive presentation, though I attended a bit late. Focusing on the title of the paper or discussion, taxation for a resilient economy post-LDC graduation. So in the context of LDC graduation, revenue foregone from tariff rationalization should be offset by increased direct taxes. Already it has been discussed and highly discussed issues. Coming to the point that when I just was entering into the room, you are mentioning about the revenue target by NBR, which is being has been set very often set by the Ministry of Finance. So and when I was in discussion with NBR people, that for the revenue target issues, no discussions usually taken place between NBR and Ministry of Finance. Focusing on these issues, I think our upcoming budget, what indication we got that last year or the ongoing year, the budget is around 8 lakh crore. The next year, maybe more than 8 lakh crore. Already we got some indication. Now, again, the same thing will going to be happen, that maybe 85%, 90% budget, will be implemented at the end. Though the whole development budget is equivalent to the deficit budget. So now I think during this interim government, can we think what should be the budget size? Forget about the incremental method. What should be the budget size? Can we do some homework before, as we know that already budget discussion for the upcoming budget has already been started, but can we think what should be the exactly the budget size in the context of Bangladesh? Implementable, feasible budget size. Say for example, if we are talking about operating expenditure, is there any chance to have a contractionary operating expenditure? We have been seeing, or there are some report that there are some huge expenditure, that may be overspent, not necessarily in line with,
Expecting contractionary non-development expenditure.
both development and non-development, coming to the development expenditure. So first start with the operating expenditure. So whether, is there any opportunity to reassess how much, we need for operating expenditure. Then the development budget, there are around 1,300, 1,400 total development projects. Can we categorize the priority issues in line with, say, for in the coming year, employment generation, or those projects are really important at this moment, prioritize, and what should be the size of the development budget? And we know that in the public budget, we set expenditure first, then we are setting the revenue. So if we come up with a really rational, implementable, budget size, not going back to the previous side, we need to have a incremental one. But I think this homework is really important. Then we can go, we can. No, we can maybe research partner can collaborate with NBR. If NBR is asking for any research support for the research partner, I think all will be happy. As you know, white paper, we voluntarily, you are a part of them, APA was part of them. But maybe many organizations will extend their cooperation with the NBR on these issues. That then, coming with this, if we can set up, then the targeting issues, what is NBR can afford or NBR implementable, and also parallelly we need to increase the capacity of NBR also, and also independence of NBR, which is very important for the target setting. This is one. And then it is reported that around 85% of our asset is being owned by top 10%. So now really we need to do a research that whether those 10% is being covered under this tax system.
There is a large taxpayers unit.
We are talking about ownership of asset.
Ownership of
asset, not
okay.
income.
Okay.
40% income is owned by top 10% people. 85% of asset is being owned by, top 10%.
Yeah.
So if we can cover this top 10%, then I think it would be huge. Then there are some reports also, the potential income, tax gap. Yeah. So if we can come up with this potential income tax gap, then I think our direct tax, we are talking about increasing the net, that purpose will be served. Simultaneously, if we are coming with the VAT issues, there is a VAT gap analysis by World Bank that maybe we can increase our VAT, I think 3 times if we can come up with some, for example, NBR people are here, around, if we are talking about VAT, 11,000 only electronic fiscal device so far has been set up, functioning at this moment as reported by NBR. So if we pay VAT, whether this VAT is going to the government exchequer, that is very important issues.
Yeah,
so I think huge opportunities if we can come up with an automated, we are talking about integrated automated system, and in the white paper chapter, you know, all the recommendations, and in discussions with NBR, we have, you know, covered many issues. And then coming up with the exemption issues, around 6% exemptions, both including VAT and tax issues. Can we rationalize it? If we can make it even half, there are some exemption is required to promote some sector, but if we can rationalize it, I think, you know, our tax GDP ratio would be increasing, you know, definitely would be increasing. So we need to come up with, say for example, the city corporation holding number. There is no integration, you know, like, you know, BRT has a interoperability with NBR. If we can come up with, say, for city corporation or, you know, land registration unit with the NBR, so whole integration is really important. Interoperability is important. We know that this, under this interim government, current NBR all has taken some initiative, but you know, it will take time, you know, to see the, you know, output. But so far we have heard that some initiative has been already taken. We are hopeful that, you know, they are taking consideration the white paper, you know, recommendations, and also different recommendations, and then hopefully our tax GDP ratio will be. And it is very important, if we cannot have a big, you know, fiscal space, if we cannot enhance our fiscal space, we cannot spend for the education, for the health, and the my final point is, we need to create a culture that, you know, why the taxpayers can see that their value for money. They are, you know, already mentioned that transparency is very important, and we have seen that in the, even in the white paper, that, you know, in the any project or infrastructure project, around 40% overspent. So taxpayers' confidence is very important. Of course. So if you take care of the taxpayers, definitely take care, the taxpayers will take care of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yusuf. Please.
Last point, can I just raise? Very recently there is an announcement that the festival bonus for the government officials, the amount will be around 40,000, 47,000 crore taka, dearness allowance. So while we are passing through such a, I think, deficit, and lots of, I think, responsibilities we'll have to shoulder on our head after the LDC graduation, tax GDP ratio is so low. So taking care of all these issues, the government initiatives in that respect, if you can justify these issues, would be very helpful.
They need to look into our salary slip, right? No, they need to look into our pay slip, actually. Yeah, please, go ahead. Thank you, Appa.
আর এই কথাটা বলার আগে, আপা, আমি হঠাৎ করে আমার একটা স্যালারি স্লিপ পেলাম 2016 সালের। আমার বেসিক ছিল ৭৬,৪৯০। আজকে 2024 সালে 25 সালে কিন্তু ৭৬,৪৯০।
Yeah, it's the number 1 grade, so yeah.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Mirza Mamun Sadat. I am currently working as First Secretary of Tax Policy, Direct Tax, Income Tax side I represent. Actually, my member Mr. A.K.M. Bodiul Alam was supposed to be here, but he is engaged otherwise, and basically I am here on his behalf. Very happy to be here. The topic is very relevant. I loved listening to the dignitaries present here, and I have gained many perspectives to ponder over when I'm back to my office. We are on the verge of starting our budget exercise for the coming fiscal, and maybe these points will help me a lot in designing the upcoming finance bill. Now, I am basically not from VAT. VAT is direct tax, customs and VAT cadre, they represent VAT. I know VAT is a very hot topic now, and fortunately or unfortunately I am not the right person to comment on that. So that saves me for today at least.
regarding the role of direct tax in say helping SMEs, small traders and women entrepreneurs, I would say that we have some provisions already in our tax code. We have higher slabs for our for female taxpayers, you all know that. And there are some other provisions that help both male and female. For example, there is a tax turnover tax exemption ceiling to the tune of 50 lakh that applies to both male and female. And then indigenous hillmen, their economic activities that takes place in the hill region is totally exempted of tax, and this applies to both male and female. So not much, I would say, to encourage women entrepreneurs as of now in the tax regime, but maybe we'll think of it. If you have suggestions, you are most welcome to provide us with that, and definitely we'll pay a lot of heed to that, proper heed to that. Now, apart from this, I'd like to I'll take this opportunity to inform you about what is going on in NBR in terms of streamlining the distortions that we currently have. We have a lot of comments and complaints from our stakeholders regarding the prevailing distortions in the tax code, like minimum tax and then turnover tax, etc., etc. Overall, we are going through a very pro-reform environment, you all understand. The NBR leadership now is also very pro-reform, the top to bottom. And interestingly, across NBR, we now have a consensus for reform. This is very interesting scenario because normally you have resistance. When you go for reform, you have resistance. In NBR, as of today, everyone is agreed that we need reform. We need capacity building, and we need to think differently, and we need to also act differently. And all has to be for the country. Now, we're very thankful that I also worked with Professor Yusuf when he was preparing the DRM part of the white paper, and thank you very much for submitting a very good report. We have taken note of that, and NBR is working on this. NBR has already formed a task force which will provide concrete recommendations on the changes that we need in the tax code. NBR has already formulated, that is in the process of being finalized, in consultation with all stakeholders. We have formulated a medium and long-term revenue strategy paper for the first time. And that spans from 2025 to 2034, so we are roughly targeting 10 years. And we have specifically targeted 6 goals. If I may read out those for your kind information. Number 1 is end-to-end automation. Now, why we need that? And this is very much in line with the white paper recommendation, you understand. Why we need that? Number 1, you have pointed out that we have problem with our data analytics. We do not have sufficient data, we do not have ready data, and we do not have segregated data, right? Now, when we go for end-to-end automation, and when everyone is submitting their tax returns online, both PIT and CIT, personal income tax and corporate income tax, then we readily have, the moment you submit your return, we readily have the data in our database, right? And then we can segregate it, we can, process it in our way, whatever way you need that. So that is number 1. And number 2 is to increase the overall efficiency of NBR, to increase the voluntary tax compliance ecology of the country, and also to provide the taxpayers the satisfaction and the ease. This is very important. So this is what we targeted, and our chairman now is very much interested about it. We are working with our development partners in formulating the projects, and also the government of Bangladesh will also provide us with funds. This is, I think, been already decided in the high level of the government. And very soon we are going for comprehensive digitalization. So far it has been a piecemeal effort, right? But this time we are going for comprehensive digitalization. Then number 2 is we are trying to increase the tax to GDP ratio by at least 10.5% by 2034. And then we are targeting to improve voluntary compliance. I explained what is meant by that. And then we are trying to close the gap between actual and potential tax revenues. You know that we are now in a living in a very heavy tax expenditure regime, right? We are giving away almost the amount of tax which we are collecting. So it is not a sustainable policy for Bangladesh, and we are, in our policy team particularly, we are reviewing all the SROs that allow this sort of exemptions. And we are trying to rationalize those now. We are reviewing those, whether this is still needed or not. Number one. Number one, should we find new sectors that need this customized support, special support? And then if we think that yes, certain sectors need to continue with this preferential tax treatment, there should be at least a sunset clause. There should be a timeline. Many of the SROs in NBR now do not have any timeline. They are going sine die, you understand that. So these are being, this is one of our priorities. We are working on this. Already we have dismantled 7 or 8 SROs. We have reshaped some SROs. In the next budget exercise, we are trying to cover many more SROs that are not relevant in our understanding, right? And then also, in line with the public sentiment and the demand of the development partners and the experts, we are also trying to reduce our discretionary power, you know, on allowing exemptions. Exemptions should not be case by case basis. So far we have seen that NBR in many cases have allowed exemptions on case by case basis. This should not be the case anymore. Then we should not have this discretionary power of allowing or disallowing exemptions anytime we want. And also this should ultimately be decided by the parliament. So we are working on this design, how we can make it happen, maybe in future or shortly maybe. Then we are also in line with the recommendations of the white paper and also the recommendations of the development partners. We are also working on separating tax policy from tax administration. Well, NBR started working from basically 1924. We have a formal direct code from that. And NBR is this policy and administration function is embedded in NBR's, you know, institutional memory. But now we feel that, well, let it be separate, because to avoid the conflict of interest, because the same person is doing policy and involved in revenue collection, you know, it creates a delicate situation, because when we have to run after a target, and most of the policies should be welfare oriented. So there is a compromise, right? So when you run after the target, you are basically answerable for the target. So you basically target the low hanging fruits, and then you either increase VAT or you raise your tax rate and you target the low hanging fruits, right? So that we do not have to do this anymore, we are basically working on a model which would solve this problem. NBR will be in charge of collecting revenue, and then there may be a revenue commission. This is basically in line with the recommendation of the advisory committee formed by the government for NBR reform. This is another committee, it's not the white paper thing. But these are, exactly, these are all very aligned, you know. They have recommended a separate revenue commission. And the head of the revenue commission would come from either income tax or customs background, a senior person, the status of a secretary, and all the 3 members of NBR, member tax policy, member VAT policy, and member customs policy, they will be working under the commission, not the chairman NBR, right? So they will work independently, and they will have their autonomy, which is very much required. So these are the current scenario now. So we hope for the best in the upcoming budget exercise. We, as I have told you, that we are promising a lot of reforms in our tax code, number one, and all these I believe would be in tune with the national interest and the public sentiment, and they will basically contribute to ease of doing business in terms of tax compliance and also enforcement. And also hopefully within a very short period of time, NBR will have horizontal and vertical restructuring, right? And this will be in favor of the taxpayers, in favor of voluntary compliance, and this will, I hope, ultimately contribute to raising our much needed tax GDP ratio. Thank you very much today for listening to me. Assalamu alaikum.
For the brief. And we really will expect that before finalization of such reform, NBR will get engaged with the private consultations and yeah, please.
NBR is now basically formulating its policies on consultation basis, and so in the proposed revenue commission, the model is this: that the core people who will be working on the budget exercise and this policy formulation are the 3 members and their first secretaries and second secretaries. But in addition to that, we will be hiring or will be inviting people from the academia who have solid research background, statisticians, economists, who will be working with us around a year, you know, in small projects, so that we can take informed policy decisions, data-driven policy decisions. And then also, within this model, we have proposed an advisory committee, where there will be leaders from the business community, academia, think tanks, civil society. They will be again sit on a regular basis around the year, and they will provide this revenue commission with their recommendations. So it will be a completely consultative policy formulation process. Thank you very much, if it is implemented.
It always contingent upon many things.
There is always an if.
Yeah, because the issues are always contingent upon many things. But thank you very much for the update, and we all are looking forward to reforms that will be for greater betterment and greater welfare of Bangladesh. So that's all from our side, and thank you very much for coming. I think this discussion is very fruitful for ours, and we will try to address those. We had a fear that the discussion might not go beyond general taxation and you know, general taxation thing, but you have come up with excellent interventions on gender taxation, so which is very much related to the compliance system, to the efficiency of NBR. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Let me also add my thanks, and it was also good to finish on an upbeat note. I think you have already laid out the plan, and you used the word, of course, if, but we hope it will happen. And, you know, institution like ourselves, we are ready to offer assistance, technical assistance, and your discussion, of course, will feed into this analysis, but through the project, certainly we'll be taking action, but a lot of it, of course, then falls in the lap of the government, because that's where the action has to happen. So we are here just to support or help pilot kind of things. So again, we offer our assistance if needed. Thank you very much.